Christmas season is usually reserved for happiness and friendly gatherings. Office Christmas parties for the whole staff to blow off steam after a long and stressful year, or going to see the holiday lights and get a hot chocolate while trying to get yourself into the holiday spirit. It isn't often the season is related to anything but good cheer and season's greetings. For some, however, this time of year brings back memories of tragedy and loss, sometimes still searching for answers to things one could never anticipate or expect. For this special video, Polygraph is diving into 3 unsolved cases that happened during the Christmas season. The unsolved murder of Ronda Hinson. In 1981, Ronda Hinson was just 19 years old, living in the small town of Valdez, North Carolina. Having just graduated from high school a few months before her sudden death, Ronda decided she didn't want to pursue a college degree, and would rather join the workforce, finding herself a job as a key punch operator in nearby Hickory, North Carolina, at the Hickory Steel Company, just 20 minutes from her house. Ronda's best friend Jill Turner remembers her fondly, having been inseparable since the 4th grade and remaining close up until Ronda's passing. Jill told NBC's Dateline that Ronda was just a wholesome girl and was involved in various sports like basketball, track, and notably, an outstanding tennis player. All in all, Ronda was a very likable person. 3 months after beginning work at the steel company, Ronda received an invite to the annual Christmas party, but told her mother Judy that she was unsure if she even wanted to attend. Ronda's best friend from work told her that if she decided not to go, then neither would she. So Ronda made the decision to attend. On December 22nd, Ronda worked earlier in the day, calling her mother before returning home to then go back to the party. Ronda decided to leave her car parked at her friend's house in Hickory and intended on staying over that night as she didn't want to drive home alone in the dark. But somewhere in the evening, Ronda's plans changed. Just after midnight, Ronda and her friend returned to her house in Hickory, where she picked up her car and began the 20-minute drive home. Ronda set out in her Datsun 210, 2-door, west on I-40 before exiting at the Mineral Springs Mountain Highway 350 off-ramp. Here, she turned right in the northbound direction before traveling up a steep hill toward her home. Ronda's mother Judy remembers waking late that night with a terrible feeling, stating to her husband that there was something wrong and Ronda was not home. Of course, this was to be expected, as Ronda had told her parents that she'd be staying at her friend's house in Hickory after the party. But Judy's intuition was right. There was something wrong. At some point, as Ronda traveled up the hill just after exiting I-40, a high-powered rifle projectile entered the trunk of her vehicle, ripping through the backseat and driver's side seat, before it entered her body and pierced her lung and heart. Ronda was later found a few feet from her vehicle in a ditch on the side of the road. The driver's side of her Datsun opened with a trail of blood leading to her body. It would seem that Ronda had no clue what had happened to her before passing away from her injuries. She was roughly a mile from her home at the time of the incident, and probably never even heard the sound of a gunshot, instead realizing something was wrong and trying to pull over. Ronda's parents were notified later that evening, and later the next day, her best friend Jill. The death not only affected those close to Ronda, but the entire community of Valdez as well. Being such a small town, many were on edge, and uneasy at the thought of something like this happening to them or their loved ones. Instead of celebrating Christmas that year, Ronda's family and friends mourned. Her viewing took place on Christmas Eve, and she was buried on Christmas Day. As troubling as it is, too many questions exist when it comes to who is responsible for Ronda's murder. Some even the authorities have trouble answering. It is unknown from where or how the bullet entered the rear of Ronda's vehicle, and whether it was intentional or an accident, as well as the location of her body, not knowing if she removed herself from the vehicle before collapsing, or if somebody intentionally removed her. Ronda had no enemies, and was friendly with everyone around her. There is no link to individuals in her personal life that would want to do her harm. There has never been a named suspect or person of interest in Ronda's case, but an investigative journalist who has covered Ronda's case has implied that they're aware of who did it, but the police have no comment on this speculation. According to this journalist, who also analyzed the angle of the bullet and has proposed that the only way that this could have happened would be if someone was directly behind the vehicle, most likely following in a car behind her. There is a $20,000 reward for any information that helps lead to an arrest in Ronda's case. If you have any info, please contact the Berks County Sheriff's Office at 828-438-5506. Number 2. Tracy Mertens. 31-year-old Tracy Mertens was a mother of two, living in Rochdale, Greater Manchester, England. While some articles say Tracy was currently separated from her then-boyfriend, Joey Kavanagh, others state the two were still living together, but it would seem that only Tracy had relocated to the Greater Manchester area from Birmingham. On the evening of December 22, 1994, Tracy had returned to her former residence in Birmingham, needing to recover a benefits book. She arrived that evening and spent the night at her sister's. The next day, December 23rd, she went back to retrieve the benefits book at the former flat, and just before midday, a knock came on the door. Upon opening the door, two males barged through and began asking, "Where's Joey?" Tracy, being overwhelmed and feeling threatened, struggled to answer. Within seconds, the two men grabbed her, blindfolded her, and threw her in the back of a yellow Ford Escort. Bound and scared for her life, Tracy spent almost an hour in the back of the vehicle before being pulled out by the men who kidnapped her. The pair had driven her to Cheshire, where they threw her onto the steps of the Eton churchyard before dousing her in petrol and setting her on fire. The two then drove away, leaving Tracy to burn alive, bound and blindfolded, screaming for help. It didn't take long for her pleas to be heard. Around 4 p.m., a passerby heard her screams and alerted the authorities. Tracy was rushed to the hospital, but had sustained burns on almost 95% of her body. Tracy would pass away hours later in the early morning of Christmas Eve, but not before giving the police some very vital information into who could be responsible for such a heinous crime. Through the suffering, Tracy identified her abductors as black males, roughly 30 years old, big and fat in build, and spoke with a peculiar accent, as well as a foreign language, which police believe is the Jamaican dialect patois. Upon investigating the former residence in Birmingham, police were shocked to see the word "death" written across one of the windows, possibly meaning that the abductors, or someone aware of the murder, came back to the scene to tag the window. Police also received some credible information from a couple who had been threatened for unpaid drug money, saying if they didn't pay up, quote, "they'd get what Tracy Mertens got," end quote. No suspects have ever been named or identified, but police do say they have a DNA profile. While information in the case is scarce, the senseless murder of Tracy seems to be a wrong place, wrong time kind of situation. While Joey Kavanagh has denied he ever used drugs, he has gone on the record stating he, quote, "owes a lot of people money," end quote. Given the relationship between Tracy and Joey seemed to be very on again and off again, the men most likely didn't have any idea that Tracy would be there. In fact, it was extremely unlucky for Tracy to be there at the time, as she had just moved away from Birmingham while Joey still lived at that residence. The unknown abductors went looking for Joey, but found Tracy instead, and to send him a message, burned his girlfriend alive. It seems rather likely that the intention was for Joey to pay up his debts, or the same would happen to him, hence the word "death" being written on the window after the crime, letting Joey know the same could happen to him. While all this is speculation, it is the only information in the case we have to go off of. If you or anyone you know has any information that could help solve this case, please contact Crime Stoppers UK at 0800 555 111. Number 3. Julie Braswell SE. Julie Braswell SE was just a toddler, living in South Korea when she was adopted by an American family and moved halfway across the world to begin her new life in Florida in the early 1960s. Understandably shy at first, Julie blossomed into an extremely likable woman with a vivacious sense of humor that charmed those who were lucky enough to have known her. In 1983, Julie met her future husband, Tim Se. While the two attended the same church, they quickly fell in love. In just a few years, Julie gave birth to 2 boys, and had been welcomed into Tim's family with open arms, with her sister-in-law, Leslie Say Martin, saying she was more like a real sister than an in-law. However, as the years went by, Julie and Tim's relationship began to crumble, and in 1988, the two decided to part ways. It wasn't long before the two reconciled, though, and began dating again to try and rebuild their relationship. That same year, the two planned to visit Tim's family over the Christmas holiday in Alabama. However, at the last moment, Julie had a change of plans, and would not be attending the festivities with Tim or her two children, saying her boss needed her to work. By all accounts, Julie was upset to be missing out on the family visit. Her sister-in-law was set to give birth the day after Christmas, and she wanted to be there when it happened to meet the new baby. Instead, she went to work on December 23, 1988, and had stated to Leslie previously that she intended on wrapping up some last-minute Christmas shopping after her shift ended. Julie was last seen leaving her office in Ormond Beach, Florida, by co-workers as they all said their goodbyes to one another. Tim called Julie on Christmas Eve, but never got an answer. He tried several times on Christmas Day as well, hoping that she'd answer and the kids could talk to their mother to celebrate the holiday. But again, she never answered. Tim began reaching out to the other family members and co-workers, but none of them had heard or seen her since she left the office on December 23rd. Realizing this to be completely out of character for Julie, the Daytona Beach Police Department was notified, and Julie was reported missing. Responding officers on Christmas Day were on the lookout for Julie, and eventually located her vehicle. The blue 1988 Chevrolet Sprint was located behind a gym on the 200 block of Magnolia Avenue. The vehicle was left unlocked, with Julie's purse still sitting inside. Being a rather petite woman, the seat was noticeably pushed back further, indicating someone taller had driven the vehicle and left it there. The gym where the vehicle was located also had no relationship to Julie, with family members stating she did not belong to that specific gym. Even with the discovery of Julie's car, police had little to nothing to go on. While family members say they have a good idea as to who may be responsible for Julie's disappearance, the police state there's no evidence to point in that direction. With the passing of time, most of Julie's family has moved on. Tim remarried and moved to Alabama, and her two children have grown up and now have kids of their own. Though her sister Leslie says they will continue to search for her, creating a Facebook page to help spread awareness. 35 years is a long time to go without any new information or leads. Online speculation, of course, suggests a various amount of theories, each one as speculative as the next, but they are worth considering. There's been lots of talk that the last person to actually see Julie was her boss. The same boss who told her she couldn't get off work to spend Christmas with her family. Some suggest that once Tim and Julie separated, there may have been some interest between Julie and her boss, and once Tim and Julie decided to reconcile, that this meant calling things off with her boss. Again, this is speculative, but it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility. First telling Julie she has to work, forcing her to stay home and knowing she'll be alone, and then making her disappear when she insists that she wants to fix things with Tim. Police have searched a specific residence 3 different times over the years that has been said to be the home of her former boss, but we are unable to ascertain if that is really the case. The other possibility is that Julie wanted to disappear and did so of her own volition. Perhaps she felt caught in her life, and being young, wanted to start over. It's also not out of the realm of possibility to think this might be the case. Being just 24 years old with 2 children and a crumbling marriage, maybe it would just be easier to disappear rather than try and rebuild. This should all be taken with a grain of salt, however, as she has never touched her bank account and left all her personal effects in her purse, which was found inside her abandoned car. There is the other unlikely possibility that some online sleuths suggest, and that is that Tim made her disappear. We say unlikely because Tim was in Alabama at the time and had been eager to rekindle his relationship with Julie, despite their differences. It would seem a bit strange to have someone make your wife disappear, and even stranger with the reward in this case that no one has spilled the beans into who made it all happen. Though it's in the realm of possibility, it doesn't seem like the most plausible. Julie Braswell SE was 24 years old at the time of her disappearance. She was 4'11" and weighed 103 pounds. She has brown eyes and black hair, as well as a cesarean scar on her abdomen. If you or anyone you know has information into Julie's disappearance, please contact the Daytona Beach Police Department at 904 254 1596.